Ladies and gentlemen, today we got a bombshell of an NHL trade, sending Trevor Zegras to the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, Trevor Zegras has been in trade rumors for a few years now, but he's finally found his new home in Matvei Michkov's Philadelphia Flyers. Today we're going to be breaking down the entire trade with all the details and why I think this is an absolute steal for the Philadelphia Flyers. So make sure you guys watch till the end as we go through all the trade details here today, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for all of the trades covered on the channel going forward, which, with how crazy this summer has already been, there could be a lot more to come. Now, this trade really just came together completely throughout the course of today. Earlier, we had Elliotte Friedman coming out of nowhere and saying the Ducks had made significant progress in a Zegras deal. And this was pretty surprising to me because even though we heard Zegras' name a lot in trade rumors, I thought if he was going to get dealt, that would have happened at least at the trade deadline last year or in last year's offseason, especially with the Ducks making a coaching change, looking quite a bit different, trading for a big-time goal scorer and finisher in Chris Kreider. I thought everything was going Zegras' way to stay in Anaheim and actually stay as a Duck. But of course, that did not happen, and throughout the last couple of seasons, it's easy to see why that trade value has really decreased because of multiple injuries and just not really fitting within Greg Cronin's system. Nothing really seemed to work out for him. But as soon as 2023, Zegras was a 65-point getter, somebody that was one of the most productive younger players in the NHL, and I think that's more in line what he'll be, especially with Philly going forward. As long as he stays healthy, if he's in a system that actually does believe in him, surrounded by the talented players he should be playing with, I think Zegras can be a perfectly capable top six forward. And sure, there are always going to be the problems with the defensive play, and sometimes you're going to want more activity out of him, but when Zegras is at his best, he's still one of the most talented players out there, and was drafted top 10 for a reason. He's put up some great results, just needs to get back to that type of level. And amid all this speculation on teams like Montreal potentially being in the race, when he ultimately landed at Philly, I think this was just a perfect fit to make. I mean, Philly especially is a team that has a lot of runway for Zegras to potentially try out to still be a centerman long term, but even if he doesn't, I mean, he could easily be a winger there, and I think he'd fit pretty well into that system. They do, of course, go from John Tortorella to Rick Tocchet, and Tocchet himself is a bit of a weird one when it comes to handling younger forwards, but I think in Zegras' case, just having that change of scenery is what's best for him going forward. This is somebody that, again, just didn't really seem to fit with the Ducks anymore and what their long-term goals were, especially with the Ducks and how much they've drafted and traded for bigger, more physical type of players. Trevor Zegras just isn't that type of guy, and it seemed like he was just kind of an outcast from the Ducks as soon as Pat Verbeek was brought on. But let's get into the trade package and what the Flyers had to give up to get Trevor Zegras' services. As you can see from Frank Cervelli giving us the full trade details, the Flyers end up getting Trevor Zegras, and in exchange, the Ducks end up getting forward Ryan Poehling on top of Columbus's 2025 second rounder and Philadelphia's 2026 fourth round pick. Now, I just gotta say this, even though I was surprised to see this type of package, it's also not surprising at the same time considering Zegras' value is absolutely at its lowest. I don't see any point in his career where Trevor Zegras' value is going to be lower than this just because he's such a good rebound candidate, but because the injuries, the lack of fit in Anaheim, and really the lack of leverage because of that lack of fit, it just felt like Anaheim wasn't going to get the package that really I think they needed to in this deal. Poehling is a fine player, could be a fourth liner, could not be, could be an extra. I don't think it's much of a factor for Anaheim going forward, but the fact that they only got a second rounder, and it's not even the Philadelphia Flyers second rounder, it's Columbus's, and you got, of course, a 2026 fourth round pick. I mean, it's assets, it's something, but it's just not what you wanted, especially for a former top 10 pick who put up the results that Zegras did. It's not like Zegras as a 9th overall pick was a complete bust all throughout his NHL career. He put up some big numbers early on, and that wasn't even all that long ago. I definitely wasn't expecting the 10th overall pick or anything like that, but I think getting at least another second, I mean, with Philadelphia especially, they had 4 second round picks in this year's draft, and the fact they only had to give up one of them in a Trevor Zegras deal is astounding. I mean, when you look at it, I think this is just great asset management from the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, even though you trade one of your seconds in that Columbus second round pick, you still have 3 first rounders and 3 second rounders to potentially get other younger players throughout the NHL. I mean, if you're only going to give up a second rounder for Trevor Zegras, I mean, I'd just take that every single day of the week. Even at Trevor Zegras' lowest, I still think he's probably a 40, 50 point producer. And to get that for this type of package, I still think is pretty great value. And I think at his highest, if he does really fit inside that Philadelphia system, I think you are able to get a 60, 65, maybe even 70 point type of producer. Definitely not the type of overall player you want to have on your team, but in terms of the offense, that's what he's going to give you. The power play ability, that's what he's going to bring. The playmaking is exceptional. So as long as you're able to surround him with more two-way players, guys that can really produce on their own, then I think Trevor Zegras could fit pretty well. I mean, I look at a potential connection connection between him and Jet Luchenko in the future, potentially. Those two, I think, will be a ton of fun as potentially a left wing center combination. I think for Philly, just though, this gives them so many more options and makes them so much more versatile, and still keeps a pretty good pick cupboard going forward to also do more with. To me, this is the exact type of bet that younger teams like Philadelphia should be making more and more. Get somebody that is within your timeline like Trevor Zegras is at a newly 24 year of age, and somebody that will fit within the rebuild that Philadelphia currently is in, will be able to put up some big time numbers with the right players, and at his peak bring a ton of potential. There is, of course, a lot to work on, and a lot of that is depending on Trevor Zegras' health, of course, but even if it goes completely wrong, you're only really giving up a second and a fourth round pick, which to me just isn't really that much in the end, especially in this year's draft. Coincidentally, I think the draft especially drops off around the 20-30 range, so to give up 45th overall, I just don't think is all that consequential, especially for a team like Philadelphia that, again, already has all the picks they do, and 2 second rounders that are earlier in the second round than the one they traded. The more I think about this trade, though, the more that I think Trevor Zegras, at least for Philly, will line up as a centerman, at least to start things out, which is definitely a lot riskier than just having Zegras as a winger immediately, but I think Zegras has put up some good numbers and good results as a center still, just hasn't really gotten the opportunity to do that consistently in Anaheim. So maybe if he's around a player like a Forrester or a Bichkov, I mean, Forrester especially would be a fascinating fit. Really, both of those two young goal scorers would be great fits for Trevor Zegras to line up next to long term, and I think it would work pretty well, honestly. That's, I think, one of the better situations for Zegras to go to as a center. Maybe Montreal would have been a better pure fit if he were to instantly line up as that second C, but my goodness, the opportunity in Philly especially is right there, and especially if they want to have him in a more offensive role, he could pretty easily just replace Couturier on that top line immediately. The big thing that I think could come back to bite Philly in this situation is the coaching style with Zegras, because in Anaheim, once Greg Cronin came in, it just didn't feel like a fit. It felt like those two were always fighting about ice time and the deployment and the situations that Zegras was in. And in Philadelphia, you have a coach in Rick Tocchet who has really not done a good job in developing those younger forwards. We just saw how much Elias Pettersson was just absolutely tanked in his time with Tocchet as head coach. So it's not a guarantee by any means, and in Zegras, he will still have to work for his placement especially, but I think just having that change of scenery, having a new situation to be in, and also reuniting with a former teammate in Jamie Drysdale will just make Zegras a happier person all around, and hopefully that will give him a boost in his actual on-ice play. That's, I think, a big thing that we kind of underrate is, I think, the coaching situations for a lot of these younger players. It looked like for Zegras, he was just absolutely depressed in Anaheim in those last couple of seasons. Obviously, the injuries didn't help that, but when he actually was playing on the ice, it just didn't feel like a fit whatsoever. In Philadelphia, though, with how many fun, younger players they have coming up, I feel like Zegras is going to fit right at home. But the two things that worry me when it comes to Zegras, the injuries, and if that will continue to be a problem long-term, and the coaching style, those are two things that I think are still due for a bounce back. Zegras, I don't think is this injury-crippled player yet, but I think he has to prove himself, whereas I think in the coaching department, Rick Tocchet coming into Philly, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the conversations they had was in Vancouver. Why did those younger players kind of drift a little bit? Why did those situations come to happen? I could see Tocchet having a priority, really, to be better with those younger players in Philly. I mean, it really should be the case because they have so many of them in Philly that they need to get right and they need to develop right. So I think that could be a situation where Tocchet could potentially rebound as well. It could be the best situation for both him and for Zegras, and maybe it comes all together in the end. We'll just have to wait and see for this next season, but I am going to be fascinated to see how Zegras does in year one. As for my projections, I don't think Zegras is going to be immediately as that first line center, which I think could limit the offense just a little bit. I do think he'll start out as that second line center behind with Tyson Forrester and potentially Bobby Brink if it does happen that way, but I could see it maybe being Forrester, maybe Zegras and Tippett on that second line potentially. There's options for the Flyers to have here, especially with how many solid wings they have on that middle six, so I think Zegras is going to thrive. In all honesty, I think he's going to do very solid in year one, not really do gangbusters, but just get back to a healthy and consistent level, likely around 55-60 points, which again, for the trade package you're giving up is an instant success. If Zegras were to pot 60 points next year and disappear off the face of the earth after next season, it would still be a success because you're really only giving up, what, a second rounder and a fourth round pick. Unless those picks absolutely pop for Anaheim, there's really no worry here for Philadelphia. And again, that prospect, that pick cupboard you already have is still pretty well intact. And you know what, man? With how much we've seen the connection between JB Drysdale and Trevor Zegras, for how much those two absolutely adore each other in Anaheim, I'm just kind of happy to see both of them back together. It seemed like once JB Drysdale left Anaheim in that cut or go negotiate trade, that it was just a horrible situation for him, and it didn't feel like he was truly happy in Philadelphia. But now with Trevor Zegras back, the bromance back together, I could see these two actually getting the best of each other and looking the best they've had in a while. So I'm really excited for both of these players. I think for both of them, it's going to be great a situation now going forward to have both of them together again, and hopefully the morale will be boosted quite a bit, because for both of these guys, I think they do need it. And hey, you know what? While we're at it, I might as well give some credit to Ryan Poehling, because he actually was pretty underrated for the Flyers this last year. Maybe this is a situation where he just got the most of the Flyer system, or maybe this is just what he is long term, because you see, I mean, he's been able to rise in that Philly system over the last couple of seasons after being traded from Pittsburgh. He got 28 points in his first year last year, and then this year in 68 games got 31 points, 12 goals, so not bad totals there whatsoever. So I think in Poehling's case, he was one of the more underrated Flyers over these last couple of seasons. If he can carry that over to Anaheim, I think he could be a pretty solid fourth line center, could be actually pretty good in that role. So we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe it's a better fit for the Ducks overall, but I think in Poehling's case, he's always kind of been one I've been rooting for to finally pop after his unbelievable first game in Montreal. Maybe in Anaheim, he's able to do that for even more seasons. Overall, I get it from Anaheim's perspective. I know that he wasn't a good fit, and if you really didn't think he was going to be a fit long term, then this might have been the best possibility to trade him. Though, again, with all the injuries and the lack of consistency, I felt like this was probably Zegras at his lowest trade value. So in that respect, I would have given him another year to try it out under the new coaching system and potentially raise his value for the NHL trade deadline, but it is what it is. If the Ducks especially wanted to prioritize this draft, they of course get a second round pick, which is pretty big for them. So overall, when we get to the actual trade grades here and how I think both teams did, I think it's a little bit more balanced than I was letting on, but I still think Philly wins this by quite a bit. Overall, I'm going to give the Flyers an straight A. I don't think it's A+, just because we'll have to wait and see how Zegras does fit into that system, and it is kind of a wait and see situation. And for the Ducks, even though I don't think the return is what I wanted, I get trading Trevor Zegras in the end if it wasn't going to be a fit, and I think Poehling can be a decent player for them, so I'm going to give the Ducks a straight C. Nothing amazing, nothing absolutely horrible, but in the end, I think the Flyers definitely got the most value here. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today and tuning into the trade talk. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Comment down below your thoughts on this whopper of a Zegras deal. Who do you think wins? The Flyers, the Ducks? Do you think neither win? Do you think both win? Let me know your thoughts down below. Of course, make sure you share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online, and click on this card for all my trade content right in one playlist, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.